nothing called fact. So Eliot has thrown the whole intellectual community in a quandary about this. And I'm really telling you this point only to tell you the hint, the direction, that what you today loudly call, or is being noised about, is called the deconstruction, is really that trying to find an object from as many points as possible. And Eliot said that, well, explanation can be developed into description, because the more options, the more explanations, the more perspectives, more context you develop in your explanation, the explanation tends towards description. So I'm sure that you know this quite very, really trying to talk about this description and explanation there, and he was writing this. And you remember that Eliot submitted his thesis was accepted, but he didn't go for his oral defense. So he was for degree. So he stayed back in London, and he became a school teacher, and he never went back, because I think he thought that this guy, because he had already chosen his vocation as a poet. And so, because I always tell you that the fact that Eliot has always used poetry, his imagination, as personal therapy, not to really explain others. But this could be concealed. There could be concealed agenda in that, because I can see that Eliot is at the same time writing a lot of essays to defend his art, and that's why you could say that his writing essays was kind of workshop for his poetry. So he was talking about this, and Eliot would and Carlos Williams juxtaposes, and in Eliot's poetry you see that Eliot now juxtaposes Sweeney in his bathtub with Christ in his ablution. So what is the thing that the triumph, the one thing common among the modernists, I'm not now making a division between very modernists and the new modernists. All modernists say that what is important is that the triumph of the mundane over the divine. And from the idealism it comes up. From, as I told you, that the first reach was caused by Bacon in his essays, his Nova Progenum, his Atlantis, and other essays. He said that there cannot be that you do justice to God, Bacon says, by confusing you. But if you can use science to do the knowledge of God's word that expands territory and in a way there's a form of prayer to God. So God can be really worshipped through knowledge, not through confusion and darkness and ignorance. So he introduced this idea of inductive logic and what I told you, that my argument here, that after these 300 years of practice of cultural, the cultivation of the faculty, modernism is really the climate of what you call modern. And I always say that we are all modernists, but we are not modernists. And I really, for myself, would never be a modernist. I refuse to be a modernist, because I know that this also requires a castration of yourself. That you have to deny your flesh, you torture yourself, you subject yourself to a kind of life which will really end up without any true sense. So the modernist writer became so hard that you remember Pound said, pick the sheep out of it. He said, when Eliot submitted his manuscript to Pound, and you know that when he was writing the poem, he broke down at the time he was working as clerk at Deutsche Bank, and he took a long leave to Lisbon, Switzerland, on the way to that place. He gave his manuscript to Pound, and Pound was really editing it rigorously. He was an unforgiving editor, and he was really, at the time, he was in the treatment of certain Dr. Vitros, and he was really suggested that, and I remember that I read something in the newspaper about Rathinara meeting T.S. Eliot after the Westland, and here he said that he became so successful at that point. He came for a while. Rathinara was introduced to Eliot for a brief while. Perhaps they were together for 30 minutes or so, and during this time, Rathinara was praying when this man would go, because he was so sassy, so prickly, because at the time he had lost his wife had gone away. You remember that he had written this poem, The Westland, and he was really bitten dry at the time. That's why what happened is that he could not help being what he was to Rathinara, a man with Indian juice, in him, and he never really had thought that his encounter would be such a nightmare. So Eliot was, the bad. Okay. So I was really talking about Jesus Christ and Sweeney, the vulgar man, and you have come across a lot of vulgar people and Jesus Eliot, because that is one thing that all Eliot figures are distinct, because they come from the previous century with their Victorian values, and they found that they find themselves on the shore without waters. They are out of water here, and they are distinct. And it took Joyce more than, see, the century, it took Joyce more than 700 pages in his epic Ulysses to say about a Dublin Jew, about one day's life here, in 700 pages. And William Carlos Williams would take on 11 words to finish it. So, and that's very different. So, there are always, these careers of modernism always require the defense of the past. And when I talk about the new modernism, show that how they rejected the past. They rejected the canon, the past canon. They thought that this was like a monolith, this was like a pressure on the mind. And you remember the anxiety it was perpetrated by Harold Bloom, his writing, that while you're writing, you are under influence of that. And I'm sure that all these writers, all these modernists, they're under the influence of it. And when he wrote the poem, The Westland, it was hoped by Carlos Williams, said that I hope there will be not another poem written like this, and I hope more that after me nobody would read this poem again, because this is a poem that came with footnotes, with line numbers, with everything that you think that Mr. Eliot was supplying a poem written by Moses perhaps, or by Dante, or by Plato, or somebody from the past, God himself, you see. And with that, and it does not look like a poem at all, see, because these glosses, these line numbers are always a reflection of the writer's anxiety about the right comprehension of that. And this is contrary to our reading of modern poetry. Alright? Am I really beyond my time? How much time is still left for me? Is there any more time?
There's enough time.
Nothing. Shall I continue? And who will support my legs now? And so, the very modern claim of modernism culminates in the revival of antiquity. You see, so this is the point I'm just coming up now, because I will move on to the new modernism. The early modernists claim that modernism culminates in the revival of antiquity, in Joyce's language, epiphany of whatever is modern is modernism. So Joyce said, and the climax, the culmination of everything that is modern for these outrageous days. And one said that Joyce has rewrite of Odysseus in Ulysses is outrageous. Some new modernists said that it's outrageous poetic, and I will show you